Hello and welcome back to Back Corner Comics. Today we're going to be talking about Snafu, which was a humor magazine published by Atlas Comics, as you can tell up here. This is the eighth book in the Atlas Library that Fantagraphics is putting out. And Snafu is kind of like a big deal, right? Because we haven't had this collected, I don't think, ever. And for it to be published in a premium hardcover by Fantagraphics and also being a part of this comics library that is being put together by Michael J. Vasillo is just fantastic. To have it on the shelf with the other Atlas Library books is just, again, it's an honor, and it's just amazing that we have all this stuff, being collected in such an archival definitive way. So yeah, the this volume, let's just crack into it. This volume kind of, it's only three issues, and the three issues were more or less, like I said, in a mad rip off essentially. And they have Forbush here, who is just like Alfred E. Newman. So you're kind of getting those parallels there. But Michael J. Vasillo does a really good introduction here. He goes into Harvey Kurtzman's history, specifically working with Atlas Comics and Stan Lee, which is really essential to Harvey Kurtzman's whole career. Just so you guys know, Harvey Kurtzman is my favorite cartoonist. I love him. I think his work is amazing. Hey, look. So I'm not going to go too much into what Michael talks about in the introduction because I feel like you should read it. But he mentions, the history of Harvey Kurtzman putting Hey Look comics in some issues that Stan Lee was editing, and Stan Lee loved the Hey Look comics. He also Harvey Kurtzman also did some guest features on Rusty Comics as well. And then it leaves the Kurtzman stuff after a while. Here you have all the mad stuff, obviously. And then it goes into kind of like Martin Goodman's, he was in charge of Atlas Comics, and then also the other like sister publications, which Snafu was published through a sister publication, so it was not published through Atlas. It was called something else. And Michael J. Vasillo goes into all of that stuff here. He talks about how Joe Manley, who people say would have been Stan Lee's Jack Kirby if Joe Manley did not die. And you could easily see that because Joe Manley is relied heavily within the pages of Snafu. Michael also mentions that this is volume one of two of the Atlas era humor magazines. So this does collect all of Snafu, but there's going to be another collection which collects, some of the other Mad ripoffs that were done by Atlas. And so if you know anything about Mad Magazine, you can immediately tell that this is in fact like trying to be like Mad Magazine. But there's been a lot of love for Joe Manley through these Atlas books. There was like a big deluxe hardcover released a few years ago, and I believe it was the first one of the Atlas Library. And knowing the history of Atlas Comics, you kind of get an idea that Joe Manley was the cartoonist for them. So this all is the first all of these pages are the first issue, which is like this big thick, issue, and we'll primarily be looking at this because I do want to save some surprises for you guys. I think that this is a must buy. If you've been paying attention to the channel, you know that we've done a few overviews of some of these Atlas books. The Rocket one, the Day of the Rocket, is my favorite one so far. But they also have Police Action, which we haven't looked at, War, which we haven't looked at. There's also Girl Comics, which we will look at soon. But this is a must buy, I think, especially if you like, the humor stuff. Here's like, and it's all of this is of the time. So some of it is a little sexist, a little, aggressive towards women. It also references a lot of pop culture of the time. Like here you have, Norman Knockwell, looking for artists. That was something that I believe Norman Rockwell was doing, was he was offering these like tutelage courses where you could learn how to paint from him and stuff. And here they're just making fun of it. You know, I'm looking for people who like to draw, and it says uh because he flunked it and somebody's got to take it, kind of saying that he's going to use other people's artistic endeavors for his own. And so letters to the editor, since this is the first issue, obviously there can be no letters to the editors, so this is just left blank, so there's that type of humor. This one's a little crazy. Our charming woman editor, I'll let you guys read that. You can pause it and read it, but it's very sexist. Stanley did all of the writing here. He does say that some of it was done by the cartoonist in a like weird roundabout way that isn't really, giving them credit, but whatever, Stanley. Again, very much like Mad, where you have these strips. They're not like exactly like comics in terms of the way they're presented. There's very few word balloons and mostly just like these narrations. It's kind of crazy. Harvey Kurtzman really set the standard for all of this stuff. TV programs this week. I'm not gonna lie, I browsed through this one. I couldn't be more interested. So some of this stuff is kind of boring. This is a really funny one. It's about a family trying to buy a house, and the house is like really broken, and so you'll see the illusion that the seller is trying to make that the house is good. Like this is a window open for ventilation, but there's a dude right here blowing a fan into it, and there's like a giant like sun lamp to be like the sun, and the seller is wearing, or the realtor is wearing glasses. This is really funny. It says, and so as the setting sun sinks over Flatbush, you leave your crowded, noisy, dust filled penthouse in the crowded, noisy, dust filled city for your crowded, noisy, dust filled house in Flatbush Village. A new life is beckoning, so rush to your newsstand and buy it. This is so funny. Um, just a lot of humor like that. This is the pinup section. The joke being that there's no pinup, and then there's like a safety pin donated by Irving Forbush, who is the kind of Alfred E. Newman of this magazine. So there's a lot of like references to the Forbush family and stuff like that, which I think is a lot of fun. This story here, this is making fun of pulp detective stories of the time, and it's really aggressive towards women. It's all in good fun, I guess, but it's really aged poorly. And hats off to Fantagraphics for providing this in its, unedited, raw way. And I totally understand why this stuff wasn't collected before, but in terms of preserving the past, and especially when it comes to comics, I think this is important to do. Profile of the month. This is a lot of fun. You'll see like Dick Tracy here. Here's another Forbush. I believe this is a Forbush as well. I think that's the standout thing from my time reading this, is the whole Forbush genealogy. You got some feet in the air. Some of this stuff actually had me laughing. This is really funny. This is a horse race, centaur sort of thing. Top secret news photos. This is a dude just riding a UFO. This is awesome. So this says, this is the cheesecake where you're getting all these scantily clad women, which is, I think, really funny because nowadays this is very tame. Um, but it says right here, it says cheesecake, blah, blah, and you get all this stuff. And then it says, turn this page for the world's biggest cheesecake picture. And you're like, oh, hubba, hubba. But it's just literally a cheesecake. You know, it's that type of humor. This Davy Crockett strip is really funny too. You know, Walt Doozy. Come on. Gotta love it. Dragnet or Drugnet instead of Dragnet. And I believe this is Will Elder doing this. It says how he posts, but I don't think that's who did it. I could be wrong. Michael does an amazing introduction, like I said before, and he actually talks about who did what within this first issue. I don't really remember. It's been a while since I read the introduction. This one's really funny too. Yeah, you get like, you know, this type of humor. It can be your thing, it can't be your thing. If you like Mad, you know what you're getting into. So, but yeah, this is the first issue within this collection. And like I said, there was only 3. We can just quickly flip through these. But yeah, you know, if you like humor magazines, especially if you're a big fan of Mad Magazine, you should be picking this up. Big Uranium Hunt issue, very much of the time. Big rugged action issue. So yeah, it's only 3 issues of Snafu ever printed. But Fantagraphics is going to continue the Atlas humor magazines and another collection, which would wrap it up. Everything that Atlas did. And this is some original art here. And one of the things I love about this like highly processed art for these humor magazines is you get all these like crazy, I mean, look at this. This is like amazing cartooning. And this was considered high class at the time, you know? You wouldn't see this in a standard comic book. There's another 4-bush. I just really like that whole idea. And of course, I love the Alfred E. Newman thing too. But yeah, this is Snafu, number 8 in the Atlas Comics Library. I think it's a must buy. And you should pick it up. I believe it comes out January 20th. I saw a date that said January 6th. So I don't know if it was pushed back or what. But alas, here it is, Snafu.